The most significant piece of the soldiers' field equipment was the Model 1910 Canteen. Its body was made of aluminium and it could hold a quart of liquid. Even in the sweltering summer sun, water remained relatively cool. When used in conjunction with the cup and cover, though it was prone to expanding at freezing temperatures. The Army used a canteen design that dates back to the Civil War that was made of two circular pieces of domed tin that were soldered together, a pewter spout, and a wool or jean cloth cover, hand-stitched all the way around it. Also, it wasn't worn on a belt, but rather a sling. Up until the Army Infantry Equipment Board sought to upgrade the canteen in 1909 as part of their overall equipment upgrades, this design, with many modifications, remained a mainstay of the soldiers' webbing. The first canteen prototype was entirely made of aluminium. It had an aluminium cap with a flat top and smooth sides, with vertical ridges only on the very top edge of the cap. The canteen spout's throat was surrounded by a brass or silver ring and a silver chain connected to the top of the cap. The canteen is a one-piece construction that was spun on a lathe. There are no side seams. These canteens were not marked in any way. The military quickly modified the construction of the canteen by producing it in two halves and soldering the two halves together. Much like the circular canteens in earlier designs, this modification was made due to the spun canteen's challenging manufacturing process. This would result in a seam that circles the canteen's sides and bottom vertically before coming to an end at the spout. The cap was also modified, having a more rounded top, and in contrast to the first type cap, ridges running vertically from top to bottom on the edge aided the opening. The Model 1928. During the interwar period, the canteen was improved again, now being made of stainless steel rather than aluminium. The caps were now being made out of hard plastic that are usually dated inside. However, this is obscured by the placement of the cork, which created the watertight seal. The chain is held onto the canteen by a loop now attached to the body rather than a ring around the neck. The year and manufacture is always stamped on the bottom of the canteen. World War II brought about some interesting trials of canteens in the intention of developing a metal-saving canteen. The most commonly seen type is the black enamelled canteen, manufactured in 1942, also trialled and tested. It was soon found that after a few bashes and dents, it dislodged sections of enamel, and this in turn exposed the raw metal underneath. The water soon became tainted and rust was set in on the metal. There was also a handful of manufacturers, all of which stamped their details on the bottom. What started at the same time as the enamelled canteens was the ethyl cellulose. This early plastic had a very modern look to it, was robust, fairly cheap to make, and except for the chain, contained no metal. However, these had a big issue, although it took a little while to find out. When the canteen was used over time, the water would become tainted by the ethyl cellulose, and the water would become foul. These were produced from 1942 to 1944. A variety of manufacturers produced these, and the colour of these varied slightly depending on which manufacturer produced it. This type is the World War I type, and the difference between it being not World War I is the date, dating it to World War II, the hard plastic flat cap. This canteen is a model 1942 enamelled type, but instead of being enamelled, it's now made of aluminium, the cap chain again now being attached to the neck of the canteen and having a hard plastic flat cap. Unlike the canteens themselves, the cup that came with the canteen only really came in two types. Although there are variations between manufacturers, these are fairly unnoticeable. The first type is made of aluminium like the early canteens and features a large rolled lip all the way around the edge. Markings are almost always on the bottom of these types. The handle being made of steel is riveted onto the side, flips and pressure locks into place by a sliding clip. The slot on the handle allows the insertion of the US Army fork to make the canteen handle longer, allowing this to be held over or retrieved from fire without touching the handle and burning the hands and fingers. The enamelled cups that were issued with the canteen, these have the standard handle that is found on all canteen cups, but it contrasts massively against the enamelled coating on the cup. They can also range in colour, including black, blue and greens. The other type of cup is the Type 2, and just like the Type 1, is compatible with all canteen types regardless when they were made, if they were seamless or not, and even the model 1928 type with the join around the middle. They all fit perfectly inside either of the types. The Type 2 is made from stainless steel and has a curve over lip that is rounded off to not leave a sharp edge. Being made from stainless steel and shaped the way it was far easier to stamp the handles with the year and manufacturer's details. The handle also now features a second larger hole at the bottom. This was designed for the dunk 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 mass washing systems. The cutlery, the cup and the messed in lid could all be slid over the handle and then dunked into the large pails of water for speed and efficiency. canteen cover for the model 1910 was unique in a number of ways. The cover was lined with felt and made of cotton. It had two ears that could be snapped onto the front of the cover and folded over the canteen's shoulders. Early in the production process, the design of the ears was changed from being clipped at the ends and fastened with twists to being rounded and bound on the hems. Up until 1917, they used eagle button fasteners. After that, lift the dot fasteners were used. The Marine Corps also received canteens with the latter fasteners in 1917, before their canteen covers had eagle glove and anchor button fasteners. The rear of the covers included a wire hanger with a reinforced canvas square to help prevent the hanger from separating from the cover. The front of the body was reinforced with 7 rows of stitching, and the US motif was stenciled on the front of each cover. On the front of the canteen cover, units also stenciled the unit symbols, which were typically cross rifles, cannons, or sabres, with a regiment number above it and the company letter below. This was present on a few canteens before World War I. The manufacturer's logo, date, or patent date was typically located beneath the canteen's cover's ears. This model 1910 cover type now has a smaller assembly seam to the back, but still retains the small square tab for the hook. This model 1910 cover type is now in olive drab number 7. Still retains the small assembly seam to the back, but now has a much wider rectangular tab for the hook.